Hi, in this video, I am going to talk about diamond-based quantum sensors. What are diamond-based quantum sensors? Why are they useful? Why the topic of diamond-based quantum sensors has been in the news recently? Well, to start with, what are these diamond-based quantum sensors and where are they useful? The diamond-based quantum sensors are particularly useful in the study of matter at extreme pressures. Well, in condensed matter physics, it is always very fascinating to study matter at extreme conditions. For example, matter at extreme pressures or matter at extreme temperatures behave very differently compared to matter at ambient normal conditions on Earth. Extremely high temperatures and extremely low temperatures have been achieved in laboratory to simulate conditions that are possible, for example, in stars. Stars are like furnaces with extreme high temperatures. To simulate similar conditions in laboratory, it is not easy. Similarly, extremely low temperatures that exist in remote corners of the universe are not easy to obtain in laboratory conditions. But scientists have been able to achieve these extremely high or low temperatures with great struggle. Similarly, extremely high pressures. Why do we need extremely high pressures? For example, the matter in the Earth's mantle near the core of the Earth, in the mantle part of the Earth's crust, behaves very differently because of the extreme pressures prevailing in that region. In some planetary objects, the deep interior cannot be understood without studying matter at extremely high pressures. Now, if you see the history of extreme high pressures, during the first half of the 20th century, a lot of development took place in this area. One particularly interesting development was development of anvil cells, where two wedge-shaped objects can be pressed together to produce extreme high temperatures in a small area. Now, the basic principle of any anvil cell is pressure is nothing but force per unit area. Therefore, you make the area smaller. For a given force, you achieve higher pressures. This is a very fundamental principle behind the anvil cells. Percy Bridgman, Percy Williams Bridgman of the United States, contributed immensely to this area, and he was promptly rewarded with Nobel Prize in the year 1946 for his work on high pressure studies. Based on his work, a very important high pressure cell was developed to study matter at high pressures, and this cell is called Diamond Anvil Cell. Now, why diamond? The question is why diamond? Very interesting because diamond is known to be one of the hardest materials available, and single crystal diamond is very hard, so hard that even at extreme pressures it can withstand and it can squeeze any matter kept between wedge-shaped diamond anvil cell uh, without diamond itself getting broken. So, if you see the shape of the diamond anvil cell, this is something like this. Now, the region between two such pieces of diamond, both these pieces of diamond are very small. For example, this is roughly about zero point 0.1 carat. Zero point 0.1 carat of diamond is very like about 20 milligrams in mass. That is the typical size of the uh, diamond pieces that is used in this anvil cell. And this region, which is the tip of the diamond, this thing piece, is called culate. So the sample to be pressed is kept in between these 2 points, these two tips, and the sample is kept here. And the entire anvil cell is enclosed in evacuated chambers, and the screws are employed here to compress the two diamonds together, thereby generating immense pressure in this very small region. The area of this culate point, the tip of the two diamond pieces, is typically of the order of 100 micrometers to about 250 micrometers. These are small areas. So you can calculate the pressure for even a few newtons. You can see that, let's say, about a 10 Newton pressure is applied, 10 Newton over the area of about, let's say, even 100 micrometers. Typically, I'm just calculating the orders, don't bother about the numbers. This is going to be about 10 into 10 power 6 pascals. That is, easily one can get about 10 megapascal pressure by just applying a 10 Newton pressure onto the diamond pieces. To achieve such great pressures, therefore, it was considered that diamond is one of the most suitable materials, and anvil cells made up of diamond can easily achieve very high pressures in the order of even a few hundred gigapascals. Easily a few hundred gigapascals is possible with diamond anvil cells. In fact, some of the highest pressures that have been achieved using diamond anvil cell is of the order of about 770 gigapascals. So this is the maximum limit that has been achieved so far using diamond anvil cells. So these diamond anvil cells are therefore considered very suitable materials for producing very high pressures. Right. Now, what are these quantum sensors that are diamond based here? What are we talking about now? Right. Diamond, as we all know, is nothing but very interesting arrangement of carbon atoms. So, because we all know that diamond is nothing but an allotropy of carbon. Carbon in diamond structure is arranged tetrahedrally. That is, an arrangement in which each carbon atom has four nearest neighbor carbon atoms in this kind of fashion. This is kind of, each atom can be therefore imagined to have such a structurally developed arrangement. That is what we mean by tetrahedral arrangement of carbon atoms. So this is the structure of diamond. Diamond, as we know, is also not only just the hardest material, it is a precious gemstone, and this is a very interesting structure, a crystalline form of carbon called diamond. Now, therefore, this diamond has hardness because of its structure. So we know that it is one of the hardest materials. Therefore, people thought this could be used for diamond anvil cells, because if diamond is used in anvil cells, not only the material can withstand high pressure, it is, one can even shape it to the required shape, because here you want a few microns of tip, diamond tip. For that you have to be able to shape. So such a shaping can be done in only hard materials which are in crystalline forms, and therefore diamond is considered to be a very suitable material for making this anvil cells. So in high pressure studies in the late 60s, in the last century, 1960s, 70s, diamond became a very natural choice for making anvil cells. So these diamond anvil cells have been therefore used in many studies for high pressures to generate extreme conditions and study matter under these conditions. Now, what happens to matter when it's subjected to, for example, such high pressures? That is a question that we would ask. Now, matter under normal pressures, for example, in the ambient conditions, is at a 1 atmosphere is the normal pressure that we are all constantly experiencing on this planet. But when we go inside the Earth's crust, the pressure builds up. When we go to different regions of the Earth, the pressure varies. When we go to different corners of this universe, the pressure varies. In stellar objects, pressure is different. In other matter, pressure is different. So, to simulate those pressure environments, we need to have this kind of an arrangement in laboratory and study how matter changes under extreme pressures. For example, some hydrides have been observed to have superconductivity at extreme pressures. For example, lithium, magnesium hydride. This particular compound, when the pressure is to about, let's say, about 200 gigapascal, shows very interestingly even room temperature superconductivity. We all know that superconductivity is that phenomenon in which the material loses all its resistance and has very high conductivity, infinite conductivity, so to say. So, it is not possible to achieve superconductivity in this material in normal conditions, but when you press this material, for example, in between the culettes of a diamond anvil cell, this material, when the pressure exceeds about 200 gigapascals, starts showing superconductivity even at room temperature or even above room temperature, let's say about 77 degrees centigrade. Even at this temperature, this material is superconducting. So it is interesting that any material that does not show a particular physical property or a behavior start showing it under extreme conditions, and therefore improving or increasing pressure is one way of studying materials, how they behave at extreme conditions. In that way, the diamond anvil cell area of research has been very active in the last 40, 50 years, and people have been studying a lot of materials under extreme conditions and producing new interesting physics out of it, material physics out of it. Now, why this is interesting now? Why diamond based anvil cells are in the news recently? Or recently, a group in the United States from Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory, and in collaboration with the University of California at Berkeley and some other groups, for example, Iowa State University and some other groups, even from Germany, they have been involved in developing very interesting sensors for such study. Because if you subject matter to such high pressures, the matter properties will vary, the material properties will change, but to study matter at that pressure, it is also important to develop what are called sensors. Sensors that can detect changing properties even at high pressures. So your sensors have to be able to withstand those pressures so that they will be able to detect the properties. So to develop sensors for such high pressures is not easy, because diamond is capable of withstanding pressure, so it is able to generate so much pressure and it is able to compress matter to such pressures, and matter behaves very interestingly in such pressures, and therefore it is easy. But to develop a sensor to detect whether this is the pressure that is really prevailing there, whether these are the changes that are happening in the matter, how to detect those changes that are happening using sensors, therefore it is not easy. So we need to develop sensors that can withstand such pressures. Therefore, people thought about developing a new way of sensing these high pressure environments. In that novel thinking came about what are called quantum sensors. What are these quantum sensors? Particularly why they are interesting in the structure of diamond. In diamond structure, though the carbon atoms are periodically arranged very well, if some carbon atom is missing, what it creates is what is called a vacancy, a vacant site. In the absence of carbon in a particular regular location, the absence of carbon indicates that there is a vacancy. This vacant space over time can be occupied by what is called nitrogen atom. Such nitrogen atom occupied vacant site in the carbon structure of the diamond structure is called nitrogen vacancy. Nitrogen vacancy. I call it NV for short. Nitrogen vacancy. Now, very interesting properties start showing up the moment some carbon atoms are replaced by these nitrogen vacancies in the diamond structure. Now, therefore, people started developing nitrogen vacancy based sensors. Now, what kind of properties one can see when there is a few nitrogen atoms substituting for carbon in the diamond structure? These nitrogen atoms show interesting, for example, optical properties. For example, fluorescence of the material is drastically modified if some of the carbon atoms in diamond structure are replaced by nitrogen atoms. Fluorescence is one light emitting property where the intensity of light varies dramatically if nitrogen atoms are present, nitrogen vacancy centers are present. Therefore, in these quantum-based sensors, it is possible to study in extreme conditions the changes using diamond. So we don't have to have a separate sensor. What the group at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory at Berkeley studied is they kind of engineered the material in such a way that these naturally occurring nitrogen vacancies are artificially created a few layers thick on either side of the anvil cell culet, and these nitrogen vacancies will be able to automatically sense, for example, any property that is changing. For example, if the structure of a material placed here and compressed at extreme pressures varies, that structural change can be converted into change in the luminosity of the fluorescent light that is emitted out of this region. Because diamond being transparent, one can enclose it in a glass chamber and see what changes are going on inside, in between the culets. Now, this kind of a study is possible if these nitrogen vacancies are engineered only a few atomic layers thick on either side of the culets. When such a task is achieved, it becomes very interesting because these naturally occurring nitrogen vacancies cannot be controlled. Whereas when we artificially put some nitrogen atoms in carbon sites in diamond structure near the culet tips, it is possible to really study the properties in a much interesting fashion. For example, whenever there is going to be application of pressure onto the diamond pieces in the anvil cell, there is going to be what is called a cupping effect. That is, there is going to be an inward curvature of the cell, and this was not possible to be observed in low pressures under normal circumstances. But with the presence of these nitrogen vacancies, these scientists have been able to see this cupping behavior even for low pressures. This is an interesting result that has emerged out of their study. And not only that, iron or gadolinium, for example, show interesting magnetic properties under extreme pressures. Iron, we all know, is a very common ferromagnetic material, so it is a very good magnetic material under normal conditions. But when you subject, by keeping a small iron piece only a few microns of size in between these culet tips, iron, when it is subjected to extreme pressures, loses its magnetism. Gadolinium, on the other hand, is a very interesting alkali rare earth material. This gadolinium is antiferromagnetic by nature, and the magnetism in this gadolinium has a lot of magnetic fluctuations. It is not easy to study localized magnetic fluctuations in materials under normal conditions. But when gadolinium is placed in between these diamond culet tips and subjected to great pressures, the local magnetic fluctuations are easily studied because the nitrogen vacancy centers present here, they respond very well to magnetic changes in gadolinium as well. And the output properties of the nitrogen vacancy centers also vary accordingly, and thereby we are able to even study magnetic fluctuations in gadolinium. It is also interesting that some new phases of matter get created at extreme pressures. For example, methanol or ethanol that is kept in diamond anvil cell, when subjected to great pressures, convert into solid, which is called glass transition of methanol or ethanol. These are some very interesting things that are borne out by such studies. So what are the applications that one can foresee on this? Interesting materials that are under high pressure uh, and the magnetic behavior under high pressure can lead to better understanding of these materials, thereby in data storage applications of magnetic materials in future devices based on spintronics. These materials could come out very handy. This apart, these nitrogen vacancy centers have been used in the study of magnetism in a single protein molecule. These nitrogen vacancy centers also have found applications in the detection of very feeble electric fields that are present in biological living cells. These are some of the applications one could foresee. Additionally, for example, I talked about superconductivity in hydrides. Once such superconductors, which are superconducting at ambient conditions, even under extreme pressure, for example, at room temperatures, such superconducting materials, once better understood, can be fabricated even at room temperature and thereby lead to very interesting energy storage applications as well. This work that has been reported in the journal Science this week has assumed a lot of significance because it could open up a lot of potential future applications. Thank you.